Get into your body's vitals with the Vitals app on Apple Watch.
I wanna get into my body and let my skin do the talking. I wanna feel like I'm myself again.
The Vitals app tracks key overnight metrics so you can spot changes in your health before you feel them. The Vitals app on Apple Watch. iPhone XS or later required. The Vitals app is for wellness purposes only and not for medical use.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome, everyone, to the Joan Hamburg Show. You know, if it's a Sunday, it's Joan Hamburg time, and you're all invited to join us starting at 2 o'clock. We have really interesting guests. We give you all the information you need to enjoy the great city and the surrounding areas. We tell you where to go, what to do, what to eat, and generally have a great time. And I do hope you join us Sunday, because we're going to take you to the Orchid Show at the New York Botanic Gardens. Truly gorgeous. You're going to love it. And if you have to go on a weekend, wear comfortable shoes and know it's going to be a little bit crowded. We went again, actually, on a Saturday. I wanted to show people it was just spectacular. And you can buy orchids at very good prices. It's just a great adventure. And then we went off to explore Arthur Avenue, which is one of the great Italian neighborhoods still standing intact in this city. And right around it, Belmont Avenue, full of wonderful restaurants, had a great dinner, lunch, truthfully, but it should have been dinner. We all ate so much. And it's at a restaurant called Antonio's Trattoria, and we didn't plan to go there. It happened to have a table, and we took it. And Saturday and Sunday are big family days in these restaurants. In fact, it was packed with tables of 6, 8, 10, kids running everywhere, but we like that. And we had wonderful food. And then we walked it off a little bit by going shopping. It was a lot of fun. So we'll take you on that adventure. And then we have an old friend of mine, Ernie Anastas, who has joined WABC on the air. You can hear Ernie on Sundays at 5 o'clock, and he does a very good show. And it's all about positive thinking, and it's called Positively Ernie. And Patricia, you're going to enjoy it a lot. 5 o'clock on Sundays. And Ernie has always been like that. He always sees the good side of people, the good side of life. And it's fun to hear that and listen. And he's been a New York fixture and a broadcaster for so many years. I met Ernie years ago. Ernie was an anchor on a TV station, and I was doing stories. And we became friends then. Our families all knew each other. And we've kept up all this time. So I was so happy to hear that he was going to be part of the WABC family. And I know if you've never listened to Ernie before, you're going to come away feeling really good and inspired. And maybe change your head a little bit. And instead of, oh no, not more, you will say, this is a good place and we're going to make it even better. So all you have to do is join us on a Sunday starting at 2 o'clock, or on Facebook or on Twitter. We're there, and we look forward to having you. So don't forget, that's our day starting at 2 o'clock. And thank you so much for being part of our audience. I'm Joan Hamburg, and the Joan Hamburg Show, straight ahead, starting at 2.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
The other day, I took a bunch of friends and we went to the Bronx Botanic Gardens to see the Orchid Show. I had talked to you about the Orchid Show But again, it was so beautiful. The day we went was not so beautiful. It was gray and a little drizzly. But you know what? It turned out to be a good thing, because usually it is so crowded you can't move. But no, they didn't want to go look in the rain, even though it was inside. So we went, and it was gorgeous, honestly, just beautiful. And it was such a nice, it was cool and a little gray, and the trees were not yet blooming and the flower beds, but the bones of them were so spectacular in that setting. We just loved it. And then we decided, we were in the Bronx, let's go to Arthur Avenue, which is one of the great Italian neighborhoods still left in our area. And believe it or not, guys, we called every major restaurant and we couldn't get a reservation. Finally, Antonio's Trattoria at 2370 Belmont Avenue in the Bronx had a cancellation, and they had a table. So we went over there. This was opened in the year 2006. Anthony Lacioni still owns it, and it's open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week. If you go for lunch weekdays, they have a lot of specials. And it was listed as the #1 Italian restaurant in the Bronx on Yelp. So we go in, there were big family tables all over the restaurant. And it was nice. There were like 8 people, 10 people, kids running all over. I loved it. And we had a wonderful table, a great waiter, and we started with the thinnest crust pizza. You could almost see through it. Truly delicious. And you could have had anything from focaccia, calzone, a roll. They have a kids menu. You could have a classic, a parmigiana, a scarpiella, marsala, a saltimbocca, francese, anything like that. They have specialty. They have a wonderful eggplant parmesan, a very good shrimp scampi, salmon, you name it, they have it. And antipasto. I have to tell you that we ordered calamari, fried calamari. You know how that can sometimes be very tough and not. This was almost like tempura. You could hear the crunch halfway across the restaurant, and it was very delicate. They had everything we loved. They had spaghetti with meatballs or sausage. They had a spiral pasta with a fresh homemade plum, tomato, basil sauce with sliced prosciutto di Parma. And they had pasta with broccoli rabe, garlic and oil, and homemade sausage. Delicious food. And we ate up a storm. The portions are huge. So know that 1 for 1, unless you have a monstrous appetite, is really to share. It's called Antonio's. We loved it. And let me give you the phone, 718-733-6630. You can spend a great day. You can then, what we did after we ate, we're such piggies and foodies that we then went to all the good stores to buy homemade bread, homemade sausage, homemade mozzarella. The problem is, guys, if you do what we did, we went on a Saturday, the line outside the stores is enormous. I wanted to really shop and get that delicious mozzarella and get the breads and get mortadella and all the things we love. The line was at least 20 minutes in all the different shops. Oh, and they have those rainbow cookies, which people are so fond of. It was a great day. We had a fun adventure. We brought home a lot of food. And in the end, we spent a fraction of what we would have spent in the middle of Manhattan. So take yourself to the Botanic Gardens. The Orchid Show is spectacular. There is a lot of walking. but benches everywhere if you have to sit, and then take yourself very nearby to a place like Antonio's Trattoria on Belmont Avenue and enjoy. It's almost like eating the taste of the past. We were very happy people.
The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome, everyone, to Joan Hamburg and your favorite radio station, WABC. Lots has been going on at ABC, including a familiar voice has come to our airwaves, the one and only Ernie Anastas.
Whoa.
And I'm going to let Ernie tell you, Ernie has a show with Ernie and Patricia, and it's positively Ernie and Patricia. And Ernie and I were just saying we've known each other. Well, we weren't kids, but we were still pretty young. The world was bright and shiny.
Oh, yes. Yes, many ways. You know, Joan, we do go back a long way. I mean, I was anchoring the news at CBS 2, and you were doing a lot of feature reporting. We do go back a long way. I know your family, your husband, Skip, is a great guy. He got me interested in buying radio stations, and your daughter, Liz, and John, who's a great producer, so many great films. So we are on WABC Radio like family here. And Patricia Stark and I have known each other for a long time. When I was doing the news at Fox 5, Patricia was coming on doing special features, and she's been an anchor at Fox News. And we just said, okay, you know what? Let's do a show together. And Patricia, we're going to have some fun.
Yes, and Joan, it's so wonderful to have the chance to speak with you and meet you. I've been a fan for a long time. I just love your work, and it's so great to be here with you today.
Well, thank you, Patricia. And let's tell the audience how you got started.
Yeah, so I started up in Rockland County, New York. I started for the local affiliates for Cablevision in both New York, New Jersey, and then in Connecticut. And then I was also at WRCR and RKL back in the day on radio. Wow. And then I had my own show on RCR in the Hudson Valley. And then, as Ernie mentioned, I was at Fox doing live break-ins and different coverage over the night. And then I was also doing stories for the local Fox affiliates across the country. And Ernie and I met, quite a few years ago now. And we've always said we wanted to do something together, and here we are.
You know, Joan, what's really important, and it's nice, Joan, we know each other really well. And Patricia and I have the same kind of relationship. We know our families. We support one another. And professionally, we have a real tuned-in feeling about what we do. So we're going to be doing positive news you can use, a lot of interviews, a lot of features, and, to make the program really lively and exciting for people to watch and to listen. I keep saying watch because that's an old TV thing, isn't it?
It's okay. You know what? I always said they can see us on the radio.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Make sure to comb your hair and put on a good
in their
pair of
mind's
pants.
eye.
Yeah.
But it's true. I can't tell you how many people say to me, you'll forgive me, but I do not listen to the radio or I don't turn on television anymore. I just can't take bad news. It's too much. And every TV show, they say, opens with a murder, a this, or that, like enough already.
Sure.
I want good news. We need to get through our days and feel hopeful.
We do, Joan. Yeah, no question about it.
You guys are doing it.
Yeah, the old line, I'd come on the air every night at 11 o'clock and say good evening and then tell people why it wasn't. And I said, you know what? Enough of this negativity. I deal with it. I deal with reality. Patricia, you and I feel the same way. We don't believe in censorship. We defend the right of free speech and expression. But there's a balance here, and that's what we're going to bring to the table.
Yes,
balance.
We have to bring positivity and hopefulness and a place to go to refill your cup and recharge your batteries with hearing what is going right and what is going well with humanity. And that's really our goal. And that's why we're so excited that's going to be on a Sunday evening, because this is going to set the tone for people's week, leading into a new week, kind of thinking about how can I start off my week with a more positive attitude and gratitude and thinking what I can do that's going to be great instead of worrying about all that's going wrong.
And Joan, it's going to be a lively show because we're going to be doing some celebrity interviews. We're going to be doing call-ins, talking to people out there. We'll have some music on the air. And we'll also be giving people, tips on a lot of different things they need to know about. Our attitude is, okay, if there is a problem, if there is something going on, let's find a way to make it better. Let's find a solution to it. And I think that that's really important to people.
Yeah, without question. And they need to hear a warm and friendly voice. They don't need to be yelled at or anything else. Are you both doing something really good? And you're having a good time as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know, Ernie, you've done television forever, but it's actually a different thing. In radio, you do become their intimate family.
Yes.
It's because if they can't see you, and my theory is they can, but if they can't, you become everything they need in their lives.
That's very true. And you heard Patricia's resume, her background in television, but also in radio. Right. And I'm the same way. I started when I was a kid, 16 years old, back in my hometown as a radio announcer while I was in high school. So you learn about the intimacy of radio. And right now, the way we're talking, you can hear yourself in your earphones and I can hear you and you can hear each other. And I'm saying, this is great. This is like really good, deep down, heart-to-heart conversation.
Yeah, it is very intimate. And Joan, recently I learned a great lesson when it came to audio. I had published my first book, and then I was asked to record the audio version of it. And I worked with someone who coaches people for audiobooks, and that was a really big difference for me. I had to go back to my radio days, but also realize about how radio and how that voice and how audio it really had to be spoken very differently, knowing that people were going to be listening to that in their ear pods or, laying in bed or driving in their car. Right. And it is such a warmer, closer, more conversational, softer
and
type of
there's animation too.
Yes.
There's a little animation. You use your voice that way. It's a God-given gift that we have to be able to do that. But Maya Angelou said something that I always adhere to. People may not remember what you said or what you did. They'll remember how you made them feel. And this is all about feeling, Joan. That's what you've been doing for years and years, and you're still doing it. God bless you. And I think that's what it's important to understand, that we're doing this thing because we love it, but we're trying to make people feel good.
Yes.
And I'm curious from both of you who are top professionals in the entertainment world, when we see the world evolving around us and changing and media is totally different, go to any movie theater and you're probably the only one in it because they're all curled up on the couch, watching streaming or something else.
Sure.
How do you see the future of our industry?
Good question. I would like to stay optimistic and positive because that's a natural way. I'm concerned because we grew up in an era, all three of us, understanding how media was different. There were standards and practices that we adhered to. We had to be very careful about what we said and how we did it. And that's all changed with social media and the plethora of outlets for information. And so now, you look at that and you say, can it get better? Because we don't want to be negative, but, there are a lot of things that are really hurting our society by all the negative kind of talk that you hear, both in social media, television, radio. It's changed dramatically from the more standard way that we grew up, listening and watching to those shows. But I like to remain optimistic and say, okay, you know what? Let's make things better. We were just talking about that. Okay, let's not get into it's going to get worse. I think it can get better if your voice and Joan, your voice and other people are out there saying, hey, come on, let's improve things.
Yes. And I think, Joan, people reach a point of fatigue to where enough is enough. I once heard someone say, I want to be informed, but I don't want to be inundated. And I also don't want to be told how I should think. Give me information that I can use and that I can take and compare to other information and then make a decision. And I think that a lot of people are getting to that point where they feel inundated and they feel like they're being told how and what to think.
Yeah.
And I see that already changing, and people are looking for different solutions and different outlets to get better information.
Yeah, there was a book out several years ago. It was called Information Anxiety. And it talked about how people really get so anxious because They don't know what to understand, what to believe, what to watch, what to listen to, what to read. And it's confusing, and it creates an anxiety of, am I getting the truth? Am I getting the information? And it's too much. It's overload. And I think what we need to do is streamline that and help people out and say, okay, here's what's going on. Here's information for you. I think the future is going to be more tailored programming. I think you're going to find organizations and groups and networks who are going to say, this is what you like. Okay, we're going to create the information tunnel for you, and you can get the stories that you want to listen to. I think there's going to be a lot of that. I really do.
I agree, Ernie.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting, and that's certainly going to be worth watching for.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you, but people still need to trust the source of their information and their news. And we've become that source for so many people.
Yes.
And we have to honor that
Mm-hmm.
and really understand what it takes. And it's not easy. Ernie, I remember when your kids, young kids, and they wanted to be in the business.
Yes, that's right.
Are any of them doing this?
Yeah, our daughter Nina, she ended up going up into the Albany area, and she started working as an anchor and did that. Now she's not doing it. She was working in radio for a while. Our son did a little bit of that, but he's in the franchise business. He has a group of Wendy's in the Northeast area.
Good for him.
Yeah, that's not bad either. But, you think about the future and you think about what's out there, and I think we all want to say, I want to make it better. That's what we want to do. We want to make it better.
Yes. And Joan, I teach as an adjunct professor at a college in New York, St. Thomas Aquinas College, and I teach communications. And the group of students that I have give me so much hope. They are so positive about the future. They really have great ethics. We were talking one day about some topic where it was a question on whether someone cheated on somebody and if that was okay. Everyone in that room had an opinion on it, about how important it was to be truthful and honest and not try to pull the wool over someone's eyes.
Sure.
And I looked at them all in their 19 or 18 or 20 years, and I thought, you know what? I think the future is going to be okay.
Good.
I know, and that's very important. I also think an important message is if you don't succeed the first time or even the second time,
Right.
don't give up.
Exactly.
And really make a difference. And I think you have to fail at least once or twice. And all of us have had moments that we wish we hadn't have, or
Yes.
right, that something happened.
Yeah. It's life.
Step over it and just go on. We have to be the harbinger of hope.
Joan, we totally agree with you. There's a great line that says, every setback is a setup for a comeback. And I think
like
we have
that.
to look at that, okay, and say, you know what? I'm not going to fall down and stay there. I'm going to get up. And that's what we have to do. One other thing, you talked about our days at CBS together. Walter Cronkite, who was an amazing human
The
being,
best,
most
right?
trusted man. You talk about trust. Most trusted man in America. And Walter became sort of a mentor. And I've talked about this with you, Patricia. What a great guy he was. And I remember Walter was talking to me one day, and he said, he had that great voice. Ernie, let me tell you this great story here now. And I said, yeah, Walter. And he said, Ernie, what we do, we are watchdogs. We're not attack dogs, and we're not lap dogs. We're watchdogs. We put the information out there and we bark and we let people decide what they want to do. That's our job. And so, many times you get into the philosophy today of, is it news or views? And people have to understand the difference. If you're giving your own opinion, it's okay, but make sure they understand that and they don't treat it as if it's the news, it's the facts. We got to be careful with truth. That's a big subject right now. We could talk for a long time about that. What has happened to truth, and we have to protect it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that phrase, though, about being watchdogs, watching and then disseminating information,
Yes.
letting everyone decide for themselves.
Yeah, that's a big job that we have. And it's a big responsibility, and we have to take that thing seriously.
Yeah.
Well, and there are so many with politics today and candidates who even some have won, who are crooks and thieves. I mean, what happened to our great country? We can't allow this. We've got to hold to standards that have kept America the #1 country in the world.
Standards and practices. If you remember, these were big departments at the network. They had a whole department that would deal with that, making sure that the information, the TV
Was
shows,
correct.
absolutely, it had to be accurate, had to be correct, and also even the television programming, okay? And this is really going way back, but to the Ozzie and Harriet days. I mean, there was a certain tone to it. Do I want to deal with reality? Yes. Has the world changed? Has society changed? We have to adjust to that. But at the same time, let's be civil. Let's be respectful of one another. Those things, in my opinion, never go out of style.
Yeah, it's true. I think that we've lost the ability to respectfully disagree with each other. And why? Why is that? And to be able to get back to that civility that you're talking about and be able, communication is key. If we stop communicating, we're all sunk.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. And that's what we do, Joan. It's what you do. And Patricia and I are doing. We're the conduits, you know, and we're the ones that are protecting the integrity of our business and information. And I think that's a wonderful challenge for all of us. I love it. I love it.
I do. And I love the idea of putting a positive spin on things, looking for solutions. Yes, you mentioned we're going to tackle some hard issues and some tough news of the day, but always from the perspective of, okay, but how can we look at it differently? What is the solution? What can make it better? How can we flip the perspective and be optimistic and not pessimistic about what's ahead?
Yeah.
Right. And have respect for those we have elected, whether we voted for them or not.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, respect is a huge word, and it's something we all need more of everywhere.
Without question.
And this is where we use our talent, Joan. It was a great comment. I think it was Irma Bombeck who once said, "When I die and I face God, I want to say, I have nothing left. I've used all the talent you gave me." And that's what we want to do.
Yes.
That's good. Well, I have faith that the two of you are going to do it, and people can listen to this new show. We're so excited to have it at WABC on Sunday night at 5 o'clock. Thank you, and congratulations to the both of you. Say hello to the family, Ernie.
Congratulations to you, too, Joan. Let's just take 30 seconds because Patricia and I both feel this love and respect for you. You are, I mean, such an icon, really, in the industry, but particularly in New York City. People know your name, they respect your name, and the talent that you've given to everyone, and your beautiful family, your daughter Liz, your son John, and your husband Skip, terrific people. And we honor you today by being on this program, okay? Thank you for honoring us.
Yes, thank you so much, Joan. And
It's
it really,
a pleasure.
You're loved by all. I've never heard anyone say anything but wonderful things about you.
Well, thank you. Come by the studio and say hello. Enjoy the rest of the day. And we are the lucky ones to have you both.
Thanks, Joan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
A great show, and they make you feel good. And isn't that a nice thing? All right, everyone. Enjoy their show Sundays, as I mentioned. You can hear them at 5 o'clock. And stay with us all day on the best radio station in America, WABC.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue. Subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome to the Joan Hamburg Show. And I have introduced you to urban archaeologist Joan Geismar. In the past, she's had a lot of adventures looking under the sidewalks of New York City and finding some amazing things. And there's a lot that goes on in the building industry, the construction industry, archaeologists, researchers. So I haven't checked in with Joni in terms of what's going on in quite a while. So I thought it was time to take you on what she calls herself, a garbologist romp through the city, uptown and downtown. So, Joan Geismar, you've had more than your share of discoveries from a ship in the South Street Seaport to what was once thriving community in this area. So let's first talk about an urban archaeologist to remind people what you do.
Joni, I'm so glad you put it that way, because I was thinking, people hear archaeology and they think treasure, and they think of Egypt, and they think of Greece, and they think of and Mexico, and all these wonderful places, which are indeed wonderful. But I'd like to explain a little bit about what I actually do. And I am an archaeologist, and I am a garbologist. My husband is right. I don't have long digs. Like if I were if I were in a school and I were an academic, I might have a long dig that goes on for years. This is very almost down and dirty, and and that's almost a pun actually. But the reason, actually, it is a pun. But the reason for this is because we don't choose our sites. As an urban archaeologist, I don't go and say, oh, this looks wonderful. I'm sure there's something here that we can find. We are sort of confined to where there is going to be disturbance. And if where there is disturbance is going to happen, is it because of a new sewer line? Is it because of a new building that comes under environmental review? We don't just go out every time there's a building or every time there's something. There has to be a reason for that project to come under environmental review, possibly because they need a permit or whatever. And that's when an urban archaeologist comes in. And that's when research comes in, like what was on that site before. Sometimes it is under a sidewalk. More likely it's under a parking lot, or which, by the way, parking lots are terrific because they really do keep things forever until they're disturbed. But it depends upon what's happening and what law has been. I know what law it is. It's the environmental law, but is there the chance there could be archaeology? And that's when agencies chip in or come in and say archaeology has to be considered. And once it's considered, a great deal of research has to be done. What was on that site before it was a parking lot or a sidewalk, and what has happened over time. And that's where the research comes in, and I find that, Joni, that's just as exciting to me, almost anyway, as the act of discovery in the ground, because you find so much. What you see now is not what used to be, and that's true throughout. Even the city itself is not what it used to be. It used to be rivers and streams and hills, and it isn't that way basically anymore. But once we discover that there could be something there, then we have to determine how it is going to be affected by what the project is. Is the line, the new sewer line, going just where there might be something or not? And if it's or not, then nothing has to be done. But if it can be something that will be affected, that's where archaeology comes in. And the amazing thing to me is what we have found, given the constrictions that we have, the restrictions and constrictions that we have of where we can dig. And I've had some fabulous projects, as you know, I have told you over time, and I continue to be excited by it. For example, one project was Washington Square Park. Well, you did mention my ship, and someone said my ship came in, and I loved that. That was my very first dig, and I pointed to the backhoe operator where we should dig to see how deep landfill was on this block in the South Street Seaport. And I pointed, and I said, how about there, Fred? And Fred started digging, and the dirt fell away, and we found wood, and it turned out to be the midsection of a 100-foot merchant vessel from 1717 that had been pulled in to structure the landfill, that used to be part of the East River. That was unbelievable. My very first dig as the head of that dig, so to speak.
Right, and what happened to that ship?
Well, it was documented. It wasn't all on the block. Some of it is still under Front Street in Lower Manhattan, and every board, everything that was on that block was taken out and photographed and measured, and has been swimming in polyethylene glycol, as far as I know, down in Newport News, Virginia, and it would be terrific. But not the whole ship, just the hull, just the bow, not the hull, just the bow, and that could be reconstructed theoretically, and would be a fantastic exhibit. It's waiting. It's been waiting. It's been waiting for 30 years.
But let me ask you: if I decided I wanted to build something, and it was in an area, like, I don't know, how do they know that area might have something worth doing? Is it a big deal to do that?
Well, it's not. You say, how do they know? first of all, the environmental review process, which came in 1978. Before that, you could virtually destroy anything. But that environmental review came in then. And so with that review, if that review gets triggered, then you have the client, the person who's doing whatever, building or whatever, has to consider whether certain things can be harmed, like the air, the water, the traffic, the everything, and the archaeology. And that's when that gets triggered. And as I always say, I'm always fascinated by how much we learn when that is so prescribed. You know, you just can't go anywhere. And if you were to build a house, let's say, and it was in Manhattan, you'd have to be crazy. But anyway, let's say you're building a house in Manhattan, or a building. Let's make it grander, a building. That you have to go through all kinds of, you have to get permits. And those permits help determine whether archaeology is even considered.
But I thought of you when I was in the South Street area recently, which has become like a big shopping mall. Mm-hmm. And there's so much construction and building, whether it's condos, co-ops, food courts. It's amazing. They're building all over the place there, and you would think that would be a no-no.
It's not a no-no. I mean, the thing is that archaeology doesn't usually stop anything. It's just it has to be addressed before they can move forward. The ship stopped nothing. The ship and the 310,000 artifacts that we collected stopped nothing. Wow. There's a building on that site. But you see, the difference is that everything has been documented. There are those 310,000 artifacts, and they're forever. I mean, they're up in the New York State Museum, and they can be researched by others. They can look at those and find things that I never found about those artifacts. So the difference is that it doesn't stop it, but you have to document it, and that's what urban archaeologists do. Now, sometimes it can stop it, like the African burial ground. That did stop. That was an environmental review issue, and that did stop because of what it was. But it took a long time for it to stop. You know, it didn't just happen overnight. So it can stop things, but it's rare. Usually, you dig it up, you document it, and so there's at least a record, and then it's over. Yes, which is sad, but at least it gets documented. Yeah.
Do you ever find bodies?
Yes, one finds bodies, especially if one has to do something in a cemetery, right. But which can happen. And occasionally you do find, what we deal with a lot is called landfill. And landfill means that material has been brought in from all over. And sometimes that material does include human remains. Not often burials, but human remains, you know, a part of a human body. But it also includes animal remains and broken pottery and broken glass. Yeah. You know, it's a mixed bag. But of course, if human remains are found, then that triggers yet another kind of review where you have experts come in and determine what you're looking at, not just a bone necessarily, but if you should come upon a burial, which could happen, which does happen.
And how often do you find the remnants of a community?
How often do you find a remnant of a community?
The remnants of a community or a village or a place that really existed and thrived and is no more.
Well, that happened in Saratoga Square in Brooklyn, which was a thriving, now called the Saratoga Square, that was a thriving German community in the mid-19th century, and now has been rebuilt and is a whole different thing. But that was a past, and we did research there and found interesting things. We found old... Actually, what we didn't find were privies, which I expected to find. A privy would have been the outhouse because there was no plumbing, which makes you have to think, what did people do for their what was a sanitary procedure in a village like that, which was very interesting. But one remnant of a little village like that was a place called Weeksville, which was not little, also in Brooklyn. It was a community of free blacks that went back to 1835, free African Americans, and it was a thriving community. And there's a remnant of it at a place called, now the Weeksville Heritage Center. But they were the Hunterfly Road houses, 4 little houses that don't align with the street the street grid that is now. It was on an old road called Hunterfly Road, and those houses have been saved and been not reconstructed. Well, one house was reconstructed, but they have been renovated, and they're part of something called the Weeksville Heritage Center. And I worked on that project, and it was extremely interesting to see. First of all, it established that the houses were not occupied as early as was believed historically. That was found out through archaeology. But it's still a fantastic place that functioned until the 1960s, actually. Joni, I love what I do because the act of discovery, as I said, is so exciting to set the history straight. History is funny. It's somebody's point of view. But with archaeology, you have concrete. Well, I shouldn't use the word concrete, but you have something that actually tells you what people ate, what they drank from, what their dishes were like, what they threw away, what they bought, and what they kept. It was just, it's there, it's in the ground, and it's wonderful to be able to document it. It's another kind of history. It's a very real history, and actually, basically a true history. And
Did you ever work on the Lower East Side or very old neighborhoods in New York City?
Yes, I was the archaeologist for the Lower East Side Tenement Museum when it was being formed, and that too was very exciting. That went back to 1863, I believe, and I expected it to have a privy, which is an outdoor sanitary facility when there was no plumbing. But it turns out research showed that there was a sewer in the street, and they had something somewhat primitive, but very much a step above an outdoor privy pit, and they did have water that swept away human waste. But it was a big surprise to find what was called a school sink behind the tenement museum in their backyard, and it was still there. That was not archaeological. The archaeological artifacts were not as fascinating as some, but interesting because, again, it was a mixed bag, which makes it interesting. You'd have a credit card right next to a very old piece of a dish. But the fact that this sanitary feature, which had four compartments, I can only leave it that way, was once the sanitary facility for that building until they put, when they did take advantage of the increased plumbing, the improved plumbing, so to speak, and there was a toilet on every floor, just one on every floor. But so that, again, was basically a step up. But that was extremely interesting to find, not what I expected, but something a little more interesting, actually.
Yeah. Are there any neighborhoods that you're looking at now or that they're thinking of testing what might be there?
Not that I know of, but there are other people doing what I do, and they probably know about it. Right now, I'm very much involved in a lot of parks projects where they're putting in new infrastructure, and because it's a public park and some of them are landmarks, they do have to consider archaeology. And that takes me back to Washington Square Park, which was fantastic. I did a study, and I knew where there could be things such as, the major issue was 2/3 of it had been a burial ground at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. And it was a potter's field, and the question was, were the bodies in that potter's field always thought to be at 20,000? It's amazing. Every cemetery that gets covered is thought to have 20,000 bodies. But anyway, that's another issue. But it was a cemetery, and were there any remains left in that cemetery? Were there any burials? So that was a very important part of that project of the renovation of Washington Square Park about 10 years ago, and a little less than 10 years ago. And it turned out, yes, there are bodies there, and they will remain.
What happens when you do find other cemeteries and they've been, no one even knew they were there or long deserted? Do people come in and notify, or how do they even get to families whose loved ones are there?
Well, that can be an issue when there are no records for the cemetery, and that often does happen. But then if a cemetery is found, it does have to be preserved, or it has to be addressed and preserved. But it's complicated. That would be a very complicated issue. For example, at Washington Square Park, there were burials. Well, we don't know, who was buried there. But the interesting thing is we do know some, because one of the findings when standing over and watching where they were going to put in a feature, and so I was watching because they were digging, there was a gravestone revealed. The gravestone of James Jackson. I've mentioned him before, I think, when I've spoken, Joni, but it was so fantastic to find this very lovely, small stone memorial to a man who died in 1799 and obviously had the money or the backing to have a headstone, and yet he was in a potter's field. And research indicated it was because he had died of yellow fever in 1799. And at that time, yellow fever, which occurred every summer, was a scourge that they thought was could be caught, and transmitted. So anyone who died of yellow fever at that time had to be buried in the potter's field because it was outside the city at the time.
So did you find other bodies, or you let it go?
We found evidence of burials where they were going to dig very often, and in that case they moved where they were going to dig, and then we watched where they dug then, and it was all okay. So they put what they had to put in, which at one point it was a holding tank for water for the
park.
Not for the block, but for the fountain that's in Washington Square Park. But they had to keep finding a place where there were no burials. They had to keep looking, I should say, and they did find it. So, but it was extremely interesting because the history of the park changed based on what was found archaeologically. I love changing history and making it right as it can be.
Well, it sounds very exciting, I'm sure.
It is, Joni. I've been doing it for years, and I still love it. And as I said, the act of discovery in the records and in the ground is both almost equally exciting. Yep. Absolutely.
No, it is. Thank you, Joan Geismar, who's an urban archaeologist and one of the leading ones in New York City and knows more than most people about what you're walking on and who's there. It's very exciting because the city has many lives and archaeologists find them and reveal them to us. All the best to you, Joan Geismar. We'll talk again.
Thank you, Joni.
I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC. More straight ahead.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Ask Joan.
I recently got a call from a listener who said, are they still giving away tickets to TV shows? I'd love to go to some of the tapings. Well, get a pencil, get a pen, sit at your computer or iPad, because let me give you a site to start with. nycgo.com. That's going to be your step in getting free tickets. So nycgo.com. This is a really good website. You'll get information on standby shows like The Daily Show, Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, Late Night with Seth Meyers, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, Saturday Night Live, all the stuff you want. The Today Show, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, The View, and a lot of others. And that simple site, nycgo.com, and that basically is the website for NYC and Company, the official marketing organization for the 5 boroughs of New York. And you can get all the information you need about activities and offerings. I found a page with collectible links on how to get free tickets to live TV shows. And I found it by going on to nycgo.com and typing in the search area, get free tickets to live TV shows. So you'll get all the information, and it's very, very easy. So I looked up, I wanted to see Seth Meyers. I really like him. He's funny. His tickets are generally booked 4 to 6 weeks in advance. You've got to be 16 or older. You can't attend more than one show taping every 4 months. And it gives you a collectible link, click right to the website for tickets. It takes you to the ticket calendar where you'll see the dates, the closed dates, the sold out dates, and you can apply for up to 4 tickets for open dates directly. If it's accepted, you'll get an email with instructions for confirming your e-ticket. It will even give you the phone number for late night, 212-664-3056. So I can't do more than that. And standby tickets for late night with Seth Meyers are given out for that day's shows starting at 9 a.m. So go to the lobby early at 30 Rock. 1 ticket to people 16 and older with a photo ID. Do not forget that ID. Standby cards do not guarantee admission, but the chance is pretty good. So again, what you really need is nycgo.com. You'll get tons of information, and you can be part of a live TV audience. I did that once for a late night, and it was a lot of fun, so go for it.